car crash cases, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys of Hollis, Wright & Couch are here to serve you. With civil trial lawyer Josh Wright from the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch and Alabama's 13 host David Lamb, the attorneys answer your tough legal questions straight ahead.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. Thanks so much for spending some time with us tonight. For the next half hour, our goal here is to answer questions you may have and bring them before our panel of experts. To do that, we've made it very easy throughout the program. You'll see ways for you to call, text, or email us. And I want to encourage you to do that. If you hear anything tonight or a question pops into your head, send it on to us, and I will do my best to get it right to our panel of experts led tonight by Steve Couch of the firm Hollis, Wright & Couch. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. So, as always, pleasure to be here. I hope you are doing well.
Doing well, and I like shows like we're going to do tonight because it deals and answers some questions that I think are commonplace, and us lay people don't even really know where to go to get these. You know, there's a term, it's called legalese. Yeah. Right? Yeah. It's the way things are written where we don't really understand, and what does that mean? We're going to kind of get into that tonight, aren't we?
Yeah, tonight's topic, and I wanted to do this. I think that, you know, it was something that wasn't so obvious to me, but I get questions all the times from clients and just people out there to explain to them why it takes so long and what does this mean and what does that mean. So I thought, let's do a show and kind of explain what it is that litigation lawyers do on a day-to-day basis. And tonight I've brought in a good friend of mine, Chris Cochran. He's with the firm here in Birmingham, Pittman, Dutton, and Helms. Chris and I go way back. He and I actually went to law school together, and he and I have spent our respective practices entirely, actually our whole career, in the litigation process in one form or another, and he's very accomplished and knowledgeable. And Chris, thanks for coming on.
I appreciate y'all having me.
Well, let's kind of start with an overview here, because this is kind of like that show, How It Works. Right. The litigation process, how it works, kind of as an overview, Chris. Talk to us a little bit and help us kind of launch into tonight's topic.
Well, sure, absolutely. With any lawsuit, the first thing that happens is an event. Okay. You know, some form of accident, wreck, a wrong against someone. Now that happens before the individual would come and see us. Right. The first thing that we're involved in is when a client or a family member of someone who's been injured or wrong contacts us and wants to start the litigation process. So that's our first interaction with the client. Generally that'll happen over the telephone. It can happen over email nowadays. Right. That's sort of new over the last few years. But ultimately what will happen is they'll come to the office for what we call a new client interview. And that's when we get to sit down and meet these individuals face to face and hear their story out of their mouth for the first time. Okay.
For you all, what are some of the common questions that your clients have that they don't understand about the process, things that they want you to clear up? What are some of the common misconceptions or causes of confusion?
Well, what I get, and like Chris said, and let me say this first in answering your question, nobody comes to my office because everything's going well. Right. Like Chris said, something has to happen. So typically when somebody comes in, they've lost a loved one, some traumatic event has happened, so they're just confused. They've never been in a lawsuit before. So what I try to explain, among other things, like Chris was saying, is what to expect. How long is this going to take? And you know, and at that time, that's when I have to talk to him about research, investigation in my office, and I know Chris's does too. Spends a lot of time on research, investigating cases before they're filed. I like to have all my ducks in a row, if you will, before I even file a case, because you know the litigation process, when you're going back and forth and you know doing depositions, and we'll talk about that here shortly, it's stressful. This is not a pleasant experience. Nobody has ever, no client of mine that I can recall says, boy, I really enjoyed the litigation process. Steve, thank you so much for taking me through that. They thank me for helping them out, holding their hand in some spots, but you know, it's not something that people choose to do, but there's certainly a lot that goes along the way. And in answer to your question, it's explaining, you know, what all has to happen as far as research, investigation, filing the case, the discovery process of what all that entails, and we'll get into that here tonight, but just kind of explaining to them the step-by-step process. And a lot of people think that it moves quickly. And real fast, Chris, you want to add?
Well, I will jump in at this point and say that what lawyers are guilty of is something that I just noticed when Steve was talking, and that is that we start talking in legalese and unknowingly do it because we live this day to day, every single day. like we talk about motion practice and discovery, and words that a layperson may not understand what we're talking about. Basically, when they first come in, it's who, what, where, when, why. That's what we need to know when they first come in. After that, we evaluate. We have to do some investigation on our end, and it's going to be time involved before a lawsuit's even filed. So whether the client actually asks that question, it's very important that you let the individual know what you're going to be doing on the front end, and that there's going to be a lot of work that's going to be happening behind the scenes that they're not going to be involved in.
Right. I think the pace of a case and getting that to trial or kind of to conclusion sometimes does frustrate folks. What are the biggest time stealers for you all?
Well, I'd say for me it's front-end investigation, and then once the case is filed, and then you get into something called the discovery process. Let me kind of talk about those separately. When a case or potential case comes into my office, or a client, of course, you know, I get to know them, try to understand the facts. I do my, depending on the type of case it is, it may be a medical case, or, you know, a fraud case, it may be a business practice case, etc. But I do my research, like I said, trying to get my ducks in a row. Products cases, I mean, I'll go out to the crash site. I can't tell you how many, I mean, I certainly don't wear this every day. I can't tell you how many times I've been in coveralls, etc., under a house, in a ditch, digging through muck, trying to find car parts after a car accident if I'm investigating a products case. But in addition to all that, I'm also kind of lining up consultants, people who may serve down the road as experts, and I'm trying to get all the research and information that I can gather and make available to myself so that I can make an informed decision on a moving forward basis about how I want to prosecute that case. Now, separately, the discovery process, after filing and after we initiate everything in a court of law, I think the biggest time stealer for me is that. And I think most lawyers would agree with me on that, because you've got, you know, depositions where witnesses or parties will come in, raise their hand, give an oath, and you'll take their testimony. There'll be a court reporter there writing everything down, and the plaintiff will have to give a deposition where there may be one or many defense lawyers there, depending on how many parties you've got in the case. There may be only one. But in addition to that, I've got to take depositions too, because at the end of the day, and when we get in front of a jury, I'm the one with the burden of proof, myself and my client, and I have to prove my case. So I typically will take more depositions than, say, the other side. And there's witnesses, there's medical witnesses, there's expert witnesses sometimes. And, maybe you can add to that.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with everything that Steve just said. In addition to that, document reviews, depending on the type of case that you're involved in. For example, I'm involved in a pretty complex case right now, multiple defendants in the case, and got a document production from a single defendant that was 77,000 documents.
Oh my. You
know, it took me literally a month working every single day, including weekends, about 8 to 10 hours a day, doing nothing but reviewing documents. So that's definitely a time stealer. However, when you have a lawyer that's willing to do that work, there are some very important documents that's hidden amongst those 77,000 documents. And if you didn't take the time to go through them, and you didn't know what you were looking through before, when you were going through them, you wouldn't know that they were there.
Right. Yeah, so there's research discovery, there's written discovery. Those are questions that you send to them and they answer back. But you know, it's important that, at least for myself, I have a team of other lawyers and staff that I can rely on and to helping me work through this process so that I can make it as a fast and a painless process for the clients as I possibly can.
All right, time for our first break, but when we come back, I'm putting you two on the hot seat.
Okay.
A question from one of our viewers, see if their attorney is dragging his feet since we're talking about time. Answer that email. Would love to get yours as well. Easy for you to get those to us. There's the email, firm@hollis-wright.com. Call, text, or find them on Facebook. Search Hollis, Wright & Couch, or on Twitter, Hollis_Wright. That question is coming up right after the break, as the attorneys are coming right back.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, and thanks for watching The Attorneys on Alabama's 13. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never need legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to this show or related to other civil legal matters, call, email, or text us to talk with one of our lawyers. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn about important legal news that could affect you or your family. Or simply contact us by going to alabamas13.com and click on the Attorneys link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and for watching The Attorneys right here on Alabama's 13.
Defective products, dangerous drugs, car crash cases, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys of Hollis, Wright, and Couch are...
Understanding the litigation process. The attorneys, that's our topic for the evening. Would love to hear from you throughout the program. We're taking your questions. You can call, text, or email those questions to the information on your screen, and we will get to them. And a question here, as we went to break, talking about time, that's one of the most popular questions you get, whether it's moving along as it should. A question from a viewer here. My attorney interviewed me 6 months ago and still has not filed my case. When I call him, he tells me that he's still in the evaluation of the case in that phase. Is it supposed to take that long? 6 months?
Chris?
That's not an unusual amount of time depending on the case. As Steve alluded to earlier, there is a lot of work that has to go in on the front end to properly evaluate and work up the case before the case is filed. And not only working up a case to determine, will it stand on its own legs, but in addition to that, a decision has to be made internally within the law firm about investing in the case, how much you're willing to invest in the case. And by that I mean you might have a situation where someone has been wronged. Legitimately has factually they have a case, but their injury may be such that it would be more expensive to litigate the case than you could stand to recover from the case. Okay. So you have to make those evaluations on the front end before filing the lawsuit.
Yeah, and I don't know who this person's attorney is, and if he's saying he's in the evaluation process, then I guess he is. I get those calls sometimes. I mean, sometimes my office will evaluate a case for 6 months or longer. Mm-hmm. When one of my clients calls me for a status, what I'll try to do is I'll say, I'm still evaluating your case, but I'll explain to him where I am, where I've been, where I am, and where I plan on going. Because, filing of a lawsuit, at least in my office, and I know in Chris, I don't take that lightly. I mean, I file cases that can stand on their own legs, and I give it everything that I've got. I treat my lawsuits like my babies. Mm-hmm. and I try to prosecute a case as I would want my own case prosecuted. And all the research that I put in and Chris's firm puts in on the front end is for this reason. I like surprise birthday parties, but I don't like surprises in my lawsuit. So I try to find out on the front end what's going to happen. I anticipate defenses. So I put a lot of effort into the investigation process.
It's important for your clients that you do that too.
Okay. All right, another question. How many depositions can the parties to a lawsuit take before they have to go to trial?
I think that's probably case specific, and it's probably court specific. I know that in state court a lot of times, sometimes I'll have scheduling orders that'll say, discovery has to be done by a date certain or within a certain number of days of trial. Sometimes in federal court, they'll say, here's the depositions also have to be completed on a date certain, but the parties may be limited to a certain number of depositions, and there may be guidelines in there for how long it takes. But I would say that that's case specific.
Sure.
You may have those cases where on the front end you've done all your witness interviews without a deposition. You may have to take a doctor, or typically a defendant will ask for a plaintiff. So it may be as many. I think you had one. You can talk about this. Sure. You've had over 50 depositions in one case.
Wow.
I've gone to trial with one deposition. I've gone to trial with 0 depositions, depending on the case.
Sure. Sure. That's exactly right. The more complex the case is, the more likely it is that you're going to have a lot more depositions. Yeah. And the more complex the case is, the more likely it is the court's going to allow you more leniency in taking depositions. A fairly simple case without a lot of controversy, maybe none, maybe just a couple of depositions.
And I think we need to say this for the viewers out there. A deposition, like I said before, that's sworn testimony of the parties and witnesses. The reason that I do those, it's not just so I can talk to somebody for 5, 6, 8 hours, sometimes 2 days. It's so that I can discover, that's why it's called discover information that will help me prove that case, help me meet my burden of proof when I get in front of a judge, when I get in front of a jury. So that's the reason that you do depositions. It's not just to have a conversation with somebody, because you got a court reporter there, you know, they're swearing them in. It's probably, while it's formal, it's still probably one of the most informal things you do in the litigation process, and sometimes it takes a while.
It is important, though, because you've got the witness under oath as well. Their testimony at deposition is the same as if they're testifying live at trial. So it really is important to go in and find out what someone's going to say when they're under oath.
Right. You know, a term you hear the most on the news, just want to be sure, and we've covered it before, but the term class action lawsuit. Help us understand that, because you see that all the time.
Yeah, well, class action lawsuits, in fact, I think we've done a show on that. That's those mass cases where you may have an individual or a few individuals who have a legal claim that are bringing the legal claim against a defendant or defendants on behalf of a large number of other people. I mean, those cases, some of them take quite some time. I've been involved in several. I know you and your
because of the number of individuals involved. That's why it slows it down.
That's part of it. I mean, because you have to find out information about those individuals, whether it be contact information, whether it be their damages, because that's another thing that you're going to have to eventually speak to in a class action litigation. But you know, those cases, the proofs or the burden of proof is the same, but the types of things you have to prove in a class action, not only do you have to prove that they defrauded people, but you also have to show that in addition to that cause of action, which will be set out under the law of any given state where the class action is filed, you also have some other elements that you have to prove as a plaintiff's lawyer. For example, you have to show that there are a certain number of people in the class. Is it adequate number of folks to actually make a class? You have to show that the claims are typical and common to everybody. So there's that different level of proof for a lawyer, and that in and of itself creates a whole nother element of time that's stacked on to the regular time in proving a case.
Absolutely. And I'll add to this, David, that for me, anyway, in my practice, class actions are actually kind of rare. What I handle more often would be what I call single event cases. I have been involved in some what I'd call mass actions that are slightly different than a class action. You're representing individual people, not putative class members. You actually have individual clients. They may be numerous, but it's handled as a single case, not a class. So you have to jump through certain hoops when you're handling a case like that, but sometimes that's more cost effective and more beneficial for your clients when you handle it that way.
All right, let's head to a break, our second break of the evening. One more segment remaining. Still time for you to get your questions to us. Call, text, or email. A reminder, if you love Facebook, like a whole lot of folks do, you can find the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Just search that term on Facebook, or you can find them on Twitter, Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. We're coming right back.
From all of us at the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, we're glad to have you here with us every Sunday night on Alabama's 13. This week, we're discussing Alabama's litigation process. We'll explain what goes into preparing a case to go to trial. It's information you'll need to know if you ever file a claim in a court of law. Remember, a lawsuit takes time. An attorney spends many hours researching and investigating each and every case. When you hire an attorney, you'll be working with that person or group for a long period of time. A lawsuit is a very personal experience, so be prepared to answer questions about your personal life, your habits, your work, and your family. These are necessary questions for many cases and can help you win, so your willingness to answer honestly and thoroughly is important. You are often the best source of information for your attorney, so keep any documents you think might be important, including things like receipts, photographs, letters, and wage statements. Please remember your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis, Wright & Couch want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks again for watching The Attorneys on Alabama's 13.
Welcome back into The Attorneys. How the litigation process works. Getting some great questions from you, and still time for you to get your question into us. If you have failed to do so, you can call, text, or email us. A few minutes left in the show, and get it to us. We'll try to get it to our panel of experts. A question we have here. It says, my neighbor sat on a jury where the trial lasted 2 weeks. Now, I've been on jury duty before where the trial didn't take nearly that long. Why do certain cases drag out like this?
I think I can handle that one, David. And it probably goes back to what we said earlier, and that is the more complex the case is, probably the longer it's going to take. Okay. Now, there's some other factors that may be involved, such as the court may actually have other dockets that they have to hear during the trial, and they have to take breaks during the trial. So the jury will be sent back to the jury room, and the court will be conducting other business in the courtroom that's not even related to the case. However, there may be some things that are related to the case. Some motion practice may go on during the trial. Sometimes you can have objections that have to be taken outside the presence of the jury. Those tend to take a lot longer because the jury has to get up and leave and go into another room. And then you have to argue. The arguments are put on the record, and the arguments usually take a lot longer than the ones you have just at sidebar.
Yeah. Okay. Kind of add to that, I know that, like Chris said, this is case specific. You can have a case. In fact, I tried one down in Montgomery not long ago where there were a total of about 28 witnesses. Now what happens is I'll call a witness, I do my examination, then an attorney for the other side gets to get up and ask their questions, then I get to get up. So that whole process, depending on the topic, can take several hours. Right. I've seen those that take a day or longer. Some just take a few minutes. But when you start adding all these things up, witness after witness after witness, and then there's something called, like Chris said, motion practice. What a motion is when a lawyer or either side stands up and says, Judge, I need you to do this. Defendant will sometimes stand up and say, Judge, dismiss the case because there's no evidence or lack of evidence, right, etc. So all those are typically heard outside the hearing of the jury, so they'll be excused and they'll go to a waiting room, and all that stuff is happening while the jurors are waiting, and it just adds time and time and time and time to the case. Then I guess that's just speaking of the trial. I know that after a verdict will come in, typically there will be there's an appeals process too we have in Alabama. Sure. Where you can appeal a verdict if you lose or something happens, and then that will go down to the Supreme Court, a Court of Civil Appeals, or a Court of Criminal Appeals too if it's a criminal case. And that process, at least in the Supreme Court, I think my timetable now that I'm telling people based on what I've seen is anywhere from 18 to 24 months is how long a case can be on appeal. That's after it's submitted. I mean, you're going to have several months in the interim after the verdict and the time that it's submitted to an appellate court where the record's being gathered, briefs are being written, etc. So that certainly adds to the time that's involved in getting a resolution to a case.
Another question here that we have, my case was rejected by my attorney after nearly 9 months. After I went to him, can they get their file back, I guess?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, it's your file. All you have to do is ask, and you can get your file back from your attorney.
Yeah, I mean, if he turned the case down, certainly you can get your file. Like Chris said, you own it, but you don't have to wait for an attorney to turn your case. I mean, if you're not, look, let me just say it like this. I know we've talked about other professions on this show. Let me talk about mine. If somebody's not satisfied with their lawyer, be it me or anyone else, you can have a conversation with that lawyer, and you can fire a lawyer. You can fire employees. You can fire your doctor. I mean, you can get a divorce in a marriage. That can be broken up. Certainly an attorney-client relationship would be broken up. I hope that doesn't happen, but if you're ever in a situation where you're not satisfied with a service you're getting for whatever reason, have a conversation with your lawyer, because lawsuits are very personal. You're talking about your claim involving you or your family member, and it's going to be a very stressful experience. So your lawyer needs to keep you informed. In fact, we're duty bound to keep clients informed, and you need to be comfortable with your lawyer. So candidly, if you ever want your file back at any time, you need to sit down and talk with your lawyer, and if you're not satisfied, you can always get your file back.
And are there some things you can expect of your attorney that are commonplace and appropriate?
Oh, sure. I think that there's several things. One, you can expect, or you should expect, rather, to be informed. I mean, what's going on in my case? You can call my office, or occasionally I'll send out status letters,
right,
to keep people informed about what's going on during the process. But of course, like I said, and I want to stress this, you should be available to call your lawyer's office anytime. Sure. They should keep you updated and informed during the thing. Moreover, I think that you can expect your lawyer, if they take your case, that they should be handling your case in a competent fashion, and should do a thorough job and treat, because it's your lawsuit.
Yeah. Let me add something real quickly to that, Steve. You've heard both of us talking about how much work we do outside of the office, taking depositions, going to trial, investigating accident scenes. And what that means is that we're actually out of the office. I know I am, and I know that Steve's out of the office quite a bit, which means that if you call and expect me to be sitting by my phone waiting for you to answer it, I'm probably not there.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean I don't care about you. I absolutely do. I'm just doing my job. Because of that, I have great staff that work in my office who can handle calls from my clients. Got paralegals that work on the case. I got my secretary, Kwani Fox, who works there and is great with all my clients. So it's important to have good staff there as well.
So that good support staff as well. Time's almost gone, less than a minute. Final thought from you on our topic tonight?
Well, I want to say thank you for having me here and letting me talk to these folks. I'd like to add that if there's anything that I didn't answer that you really want an answer to, you can always contact me. And I'm sure the same goes for Steve.
Sure. And as far as me, here's what I want to say, David. I'm not making excuses for lawyers on why it takes so long. The reason we did this show is because I want people to be aware of what goes on behind the scenes. It's not a bunch of lawyers sitting in ivory towers waiting on stuff to be done for. I mean, at least my office and Chris's office, I get down there and roll my sleeves up and get dirty, if you will.
Yeah, and I think the question's answered. We appreciate your time. We're out of time. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us. Ways for you to still get in touch with the firm of Hollis, Wright &